Well, welcome everyone. Glad you could be here with us this beautiful Sunday. It's Chris's birthday, so this is turning into a birthday party.
Happy to celebrate.
Beautiful. So we're so happy this will be our closing session, but we have a good 3 hours to really dive into the heart of the experience and share it. And of course, welcome questions. Oh, there's Sundari. Hi, Sundari. Welcome in. We will have time for lots of questions and answers. Svava has amazing music, so it's just amazing to have it live here. And she has graciously agreed to open us up with a couple songs just to help us relax and let go of all the thoughts of the day, of the past, and just kind of sink into that warm, cozy, centered space of being present, being in the present moment. So thank you, Svava.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor. Yeah, I was feeling to sing a song called Beautiful Day. It's funny, this morning I was sitting here singing it a little bit, and then the sun started peeking out. So,
in the middle of the rainstorm.
In the middle of the rainstorm.
Sun is rising, a new day has come. Time to smile and open my eyes. Time to rise and shine. Embrace the blue sky. Watch the birds fly. Feel the wind blow in my eyes. A new day has arrived. What a beautiful day. What a glorious day. Thank you, God, for all I have. Thank you for this day. Feel the green grass. Smell the fresh sea. Watch the flowers embrace the sun. Love is in the air. What a beautiful day. What a glorious I give to truth, I give to you. What a beautiful day. What a glorious day. Thank you, God, for all I have. Thank you for this day. This beautiful day. This beautiful day. What a beautiful day. A beautiful day.
And this song is called I Found You.
Far across the ocean, so blue. High up in the sky, I see you. Light and love pour through. Down on me, oh God, I feel you. Down on me, oh God, I feel you. God, you're everything I see. God, you are everything to me. Oh God, I found you within. You are everything I want to be. Your love has set my heart free. Everything I had to go through to remember that I am you. The dark clouds that had to go by, all the tears I let my eyes cry, to leave the world behind and say goodbye. God, you're everything I see. God, you are everything to me. I want to be. Love has set my heart free. All I know is I am light. The world is gone and I am bright. All my thoughts are one with you. Oh God, I finally found you. Oh God, I'm one with you. Far across the ocean so blue, high up in the sky I see you. Light and love pour through. Down on me, oh God, I feel you. Down on me, oh God, I feel you. God, you're everything I see. God, you are everything to me. Oh God, I found you within. You are everything I want to be. Your love has set my heart free. Your love has set my heart free. Your love has set my heart free.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Oh, that served the purpose very well. We all go, oh, what day is it? What time is it? Oh, who cares? Oh. You know, that's the beautiful thing of music. Well, thank you all for coming. We had this beautiful closing session to just sink into the core of our being, of our reality, and oftentimes people say, yeah, I really want this journey to be fun and filled with joy and happiness, and I want it to be consistent. I want that consistent state of mind where I just am sailing, soaring in that happiness and letting go of anything else that I had once clung to, just to be lifted up and to soar in the light. And when I speak of the word God, I always think of when I was growing up, I was always told, God is all-knowing and all-loving and all-powerful. And I thought, wow, those three descriptions seem to be important. All-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful. And then as I've worked with the Course these last 36 years, it has just gone deeper and deeper into my experience, that if this is a a world that was made to deny God, then it would obviously deny the all-knowing, all-loving, and the all-powerful. And therefore, to be willing to raise any belief about this world up into awareness is important, because even if it's unconscious, then our prayer is, let it be raised into consciousness, so I can take one last look at it and kiss it goodbye and say, thank you, but no thanks. I want God. I want to know my source. I don't want to know my creator. I want to know heaven. And there's a part where, in A Course in Miracles, where Jesus says that basically a child of God can only know complete happiness in the environment in which the child was created. And that means that if the child was created in spirit, then perfect happiness, which we're told is God's will, must be from knowing that spiritual reality. And then how do we relate to that in time and space? How does it practically apply to our daily lives, to what we're going through, even to our daily spiritual practice? How do we make contact with that remembrance of who we truly are? The I am presence before time was. Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am. So he was teaching us that the present moment is not in between the past and the future. It's actually before time was, which is why we need guidance so much. Because in common everyday language, we say, well, I'm mowing the grass right now, or I'm doing the dishes right now, and that's really not the now. Because Jesus teaches us at no single instant does the body exist at all. It's always remembered or anticipated. At no single instant does the body exist at all. So he says it in many ways in the Course. He says, when you are aware that when you are mind, holy mind, W-H-O-L-L-Y, and purely mind. And he says when you are aware of your mind, the body is gone from your self-concept. And when you are aware of the body, the mind is gone from your self-concept. You can believe you have a brain, you can believe you have a body, but your divine mind, your divinity, is completely pushed out of awareness. So when I was younger, I used to go to body, mind, spirit conferences, and Jesus quickly taught me with the Course, well, the mind is just, he calls it in the clarification of terms, he says the mind is the activating agent of spirit. And if the mind is the activating agent of spirit, I want to get in touch with my mind. I want to go beyond the idea of a brain, which is an artificial gray matter. It has nothing to do. And the little neurotransmitters that go around the brain are not our thoughts. Jesus says thinking that those little neuroimpulses are your thoughts is like holding a match up to the sun. Whoa. So much for the neurotransmitters. The match compared to the sun. So I've delved into science and Newtonian science, and I've realized, quantum is the way. Quantum lines up with the teachings of the Course in Miracles. Quantum transcends Newtonian completely. I got a beautiful email from Sundari. She was saying, it's more than the arrow of time is more than just destruction and entropy. It's disorder. Yeah, I agree. That's another good. That's a synonym. I like the word disorder because there's a part in the Course where Jesus says, in reality, God orders your thoughts. And the belief in the ego is the belief that you can order your own thoughts. And I like that part. God orders your thoughts, that's reality, as the Christ. And you believe you can order your own thoughts. You believe you can have judgments, you believe you can have opinions, you believe you can have preferences, you believe you can make an illusion and call it real. And furthermore, divide that illusion up into different pieces and make hierarchies of illusion, which goes against the first principle of the Course in Miracles, the 50 principles at the beginning of the book. There are no order of difficulty in miracles. And the reason there are no order of difficulty in miracles is because there is no hierarchy of illusion. One person is all persons. One thing is all things. in the end, you have to just make one distinction in your mind, which is what is the same and what is different. That's it. One lesson. That's it. It can seem to be a difficult lesson, but what he's saying is the world that you perceive is all the same. In fact, he does say at one point, make this year different by making it all the same. He said, see the sameness of illusions. See, they're all equally unreal. And what is different is the thought system in your mind, which comes from love, which is the Holy Spirit residing in that thought system, is different from the ego. The difference is in the mind, a discernment between the right mind and the wrong mind, a discernment between being aligned with God and being aligned with the ego. Because the ego is a death wish, and God is eternal life. And death and life don't have a meeting point. You can make up a world of opposites where you say, birth is the beginning of life and death is the end of life, and Jesus is like, oh wow, you're in big time fiction. You're an inventor. Oh, you're going to try to be an inventor now, and make a world of opposites, life and death, birth and death. You can try to make up a world of opposites, but you won't know God if you continue to believe in those opposites, because God is one. There are not many gods. And a lot of times in Christianity, I grew up Christian, so the Trinity was always a little perplexing and confusing. Sometimes they would even call the Trinity the triune God. I'm like, why three? Isn't one enough? You have to make God into a triangle. And then the Course explains that God, the omnipotent one, the all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God, he calls it like the prime creator. God is all that is, and the mind of God contains all that is. There is nothing apart from the mind of God, and that God is pure spirit. Oh, that fits with all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful, pure light, pure love, eternal light, pure spirit, God. Okay. But to remember that, you can say, wow, it seems to be the world of time-space is different from that. There's nothing really eternal. It's like, even Jesus talks about creation, and people say, give me an example in the world or your worldly experience of creation. And I say, I can't give you an example. It would be like, you have an original Rembrandt or original Van Gogh, and then you make lots of copies, and they're all over the world, and they go, where is the original? It's in the Louvre, or it's in some museum or some person's house, wealthy person's house. But the copies are not the original. And this is a world of repetition, this is a world of temporary objects and images, this is a world of disorder. I'll use your word, disorder. The era of time is disorder, and it's becoming more disordered. It's going from disorder to more disorder. So, in order to awaken, you have to come to that distinction in the mind of what is the same and what is different. I remember there was two guys who recorded a song years ago, and I used to get all these Course in Miracles songs because I was traveling all over the country and in Canada and in the world, 44 countries, so people gave me tons of songs, tons of movie recommendations. It's best to be out on the road, and people are just saying, I've got a gift for you. In fact, I've got a lot of gifts for you, so my music collection grew quickly, faster than in Spotify and Apple. When you're out on the road and you're in people's houses, Here, take it. It's a gift. Take this before. This touched my heart. So I learned about a lot of music. I learned a lot about spiritualities, a lot about spiritual practices from just staying in people's living rooms and in their houses and having conversations over the kitchen table or in the living room table. It was really organic. It's a fun way to get it experientially when you're not going from hotel to hotel, but literally house to house, to condo to apartment, to let's do a barbecue in the backyard, let's do a potluck, let me call my friends up, So it's been like 30 years of that. And that's like a real organic way to really get into it. And then also notice where your darkness comes up, where you want to judge something, where you want to judge against something. And it doesn't feel good. It feels very contracting. You don't like how it feels. You want to feel the joy. So what I have discovered is what Jesus is teaching us in the Course is he says this Course does not attempt to teach the meaning of love, for that is far beyond what can be taught. It aims at removing the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. It's like Jesus is saying, don't try to take a course or a curriculum on light, because you have to prepare your mind to experience that light. You cannot know this light if you judge. You cannot know this light if you are judging. And so basically the Course and the curriculum of the Course is aimed at learning the conditions to be ready for the light to shine. The light already shines. So if we talk about light, we could say that the properties are it just simply is, and it simply extends and extends and extends without opposite. It's not a verb. It's not something that is like an action that we could describe as a verb. It's actually a presence that is prior to time. So if the mind believes in time, it can't know that love. It can't know that love because time itself is a block, linear time. Time-space is a block. It's the veil drawn over the truth. It's the onion that we have to peel. It's the consciousness that we have to raise up so high that once we reach the tippy top of consciousness, God can say, "Ah, my beloved son, in whom I'm well pleased. You have transcended the veil of consciousness and you've come home to me. You value me and I value you. And here's where we have always been. The other was a dream." You don't get to tell war stories when you get back to heaven. What did you go through? No, there's no war stories even. It's so bright that the war stories are gone. It's just pure love. And I was thinking, it's kind of like, Sundar, you've been a professor of chemistry, a teacher. Do you ever remember the days of overhead projectors? Did you ever use an overhead projector? With teaching chemistry, I'm sure you did. And I was in university for 10 years, so I got to see lots of overhead projectors. When you turn on the overhead projector, it's just this bright light, and it goes up through this contraption that's going to project the light, or project whatever comes into the lens onto the screen. And then chemistry professors and all kinds of professors draw their things out, and they can teach in a large auditorium, because before the days of big screen TVs and projecting things from your phone and everything, there was overhead projectors. And when you switched it on, it was pure light, and then what went on the wall was the light. And then you could bring in your overlays to do your teaching. Today we're going to talk about this compound. This is what it looks like projected on the screen so everybody could see it, overhead projected. But initially, without any overlays, the light is just projected cleanly on the wall when you first turn it on. And really that's what the Course is saying. He's saying, I'm just giving you a book, which is just one tool among many tools and symbols in the world. There's nothing special about it. It's just a tool that could be very helpful at taking away all the overlays, because sometimes the teacher would lay the first thing and then they would say, now I'm going to add, and they'd put another one on, and then that's how you would do. You didn't even have to worry about copying notes onto a blackboard. It was easier to just have your overlays prepared ahead of time, and then you just keep adding overlays. And of course the wall got darker and darker as more images, and the students in the classroom are like, okay, I gotta make room for that, and because the overlays came on. And Jesus is kind of saying, That's what you perceive as your everyday life, is those shadows. And that's why even with the movie analogy, you just, if it was just the bright light in the projector going directly onto the screen with no film, no shadows, it would just be blazing light. You would just go in and see, it would be probably very bright on the eyes if you're in a dark theater to just see light. Now, if you take that analogy further, you can see that's why Jesus is saying the purpose to remove the obstacles to the awareness of love's presence. And we'll say love is that light. And love, even reflected on the screen, we'll call that forgiveness. Because in heaven there's no screen, and no lens, and no projector, and no light that moves through time and space. It's just the state of being, of perfect isness, a perfect oneness, a perfect love. If you go with that analogy, then you start to realize, then that would mean if I go through what seems to be this world and I keep removing the overlays, removing, that's like clearing the mirror of the mind. And isn't that what all the saints and mystics throughout history have said? Buddha, empty your mind. Jesus, empty your mind. Ramana Maharshi, empty your mind. All the saints have said, empty the contents of your consciousness. Also, yesterday I shared that Jesus tells us that consciousness is the domain of the ego, and consciousness did not arise until after the belief in separation. Judgment did not arise until after the belief in separation. God didn't create consciousness or judgment. Judgment was a mechanism that the ego invented for the purpose of bringing order into chaos, bringing order into the disorder, bringing order into entropy in its own way. Why? To bring order into chaos in order to minimize fear without letting it go. Sneaky. Minimize fear without letting it go. Thus became the beginning of defense mechanisms. And anybody who's studied psychology know, whether you talk about projection, repression, denial, sublimation, Freud came up with quite a few names of defense mechanisms, but they all have their origin in the belief in separation and the generation of judgment. So judgment is a way to deny God. And the correction of judgment is to offer it to the Holy Spirit, who can use anything that the ego made to take the mind toward the light. The ego invented judgment. The Holy Spirit uses judgment to take the mind beyond judgment. This is the key, because this is a reinterpretation of the judgment. And people say, do you have a more common name for the reinterpretation of judgment? Yes, it's guidance. Guidance is so important. We were talking, and Chris was saying he studied a lot of Eastern things, and so is Ruth, and that was, you were saying, well, that's got a guidance kind of coming in was something that wasn't so big in non-dual circles, but for Jesus, guidance is absolutely important because it's the unwinding from the dualistic thought system. It's using something that the ego made to take you beyond what the ego made and beyond the ego. Does that make sense? Yes. So suddenly you see, wow, that's important. And of course the ego is terrified of that, because if that's the means that Jesus is using to help the sleeping mind wake up, then the ego will say, I'll just make up pseudo-judgment. And then you have communities come together. What's your judgment? Well, my guidance is telling me this. Well, my guidance is telling me that. And how many of us have had it in relationships or small groups or course groups or any group where people say, that's not what I'm hearing. That's your guidance, and this is my guidance. Jesus did dictate a little pamphlet that's now integrated into the course called the Song of Prayer, where Jesus says, if two people pray together and they are genuinely attuned, they will hear the same thing at the same time. Oh my gosh, hear the same thing at the same time. That must mean it's one Holy Spirit? You mean there's not 6.8 billion Holy Spirits running around? Because in course circles you will hear, my Holy Spirit is telling me this, and your Holy Spirit is telling you that, and we just have to agree to disagree. Something's fishy about that. Must mean the Holy Spirit's in disagreement. If my Holy Spirit is different than your Holy Spirit, you see? So the ego is quite clever. Let's not dismiss it as nothing without saying it's quite ingenious, it's quite clever, and to invent something like this, time-space, to cover itself, that's kind of a genius move. And people say, why does it take so long to wake up? Well, the puff of nothing, we also could say it's a genius. It's a genius at illusions. It's the great manipulator.
I want to ask about that, because I was watching, I'm intrigued by the focus on guidance, but I was watching, I had this enormous resistance to it, and I was looking, what is it? And it is because I think sometimes people use it as pure bullshit.
Yeah.
And they have a thought or feeling, and they say, that's guidance. And they use it to justify really bad behavior at times.
Yeah.
And I realized that's my huge warning lights go off when people start saying it's guidance from God. Wait a second. How do you know that it isn't just your, what Scrooge say, undigested bit of mutton?
Yeah, that's it. I think in the end, I always used to say the proof's in the pudding. So I've always told people when you get into spirituality or religion or anything, really investigate. The state of mind, the attitude, the joy is a key reflector of sincere guidance, of sincere sacredness. Like we watched that movie yesterday, and I just looked at how many times Prabhupada was smiling. I saw his teeth throughout the movie. And even the little gold thing was there. I mean, I saw a lot of teeth and a lot of smiles. And then sometimes they would just have a photo ref of him, and there was just this, he was always smiling. And if you're doing that consistently, there's a better chance that the guidance is more tuned in and more consistent, because the proof's in the pudding in the sense that the demonstration is the teaching. It's the attitude. It goes really beyond the words. Words, Jesus says, are symbols of symbols twice removed from reality. So if we just start to rely on the words, and many people have told me, I don't trust my brothers and sisters. I want to know God, but can I get there without trusting my brothers and sisters? Because they are, frankly, a mess. Judging from my so many decades on the planet, I can conclude human beings are a mess. You're a psychotherapist, you're a therapist, and she's just smiling going, yeah, that's my profession. I meet people, clients, all the time. And that's why it has to be something that's really felt and experienced. I mean, I've had different people that I've worked with over the years, and one of them was Lisa, and she was a CEO of a company, Lisa, and she, when I first met her, she called me up on my cell phone. I forget where I was traveling, and I answered the cell phone, and I said, hello, and all I heard was, I want joy. Not hello back, not is this David, nothing, just I want joy. And I went, I can join you in that completely. And so that was my response to what I join you completely in that. This is Lisa. Hi, this is David. The names were secondary. I want joy. Yes, I join you in that. That was the first thing. Well, after that, she said, why don't you... she found out I was coming to give a gathering at a Miracle Sangha. It was like a Buddhist Course in Miracles center. And so she said, great, I see you're coming to a place that's very Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. It's very close to where I live. My business is in Mount Joy. Hey! That's a good name, Mount Joy, to have a business. That's a good... Okay, I'll meet you there. And then as I was heading over there, I said, well, it looks like I'm going to get there a day early. I called her up. I said, would you like to have dinner? She told me later, who is this guy? Who is, suspicion. Yeah. And then she said, I don't think so, buddy. I want joy. I don't think so, buddy. So I remember, I said, okay, that's great. I'll see you at the Miracle Sangha. Okay, bye-bye. So we go there, and then when I saw her, she had brought 2 friends along, and it was very deep and very reverent, very still. People mostly sitting around on cushions, and I gave my talk, and then at the end, she came around to greet me and say, hi, I'm Lisa, but she was bouncing up and down like a Mexican jumping bean. If you ever tried to hug somebody who's not on the earth consistently, it's not even easy to hug somebody. You have to kind of jump with them, you have to kind of try to jump into them so you don't crash. So I did, and then afterwards, and then she said, come to my house. I'd love to have you come to my house. I own a nursing staffing company. I'm the CEO, and all these nurses. We're doing a Course in Miracles during the breaks. I'm showing videos of the Course. I wrote the Course in Miracles and Jesus into the bylaws of my company, Abundant Nursing, and so she's obviously big time into the Course. She was also into manifesting. She had a God room on her house where she had been going out every day and manifesting. She was like the manifesting lady. She had filled a whole room in her house, big, like this big, with stuff, statues, paintings, jewelry, everything. And so I said, okay, I'll come to your house. And she said, can I cook you a meal? And I said, if you want to make a meal, I will join you in a meal, sure. And she said, what's your favorite meal? And I said, what's your favorite meal? You cook your favorite meal, and I'll show up and I'll eat it, and we'll just have a joyful time. So I went there. She brought in all these nurses, and I just gave a talk in her living room, and the nurses, even though they were watching videos and doing the course, they were a little bit frightened because first this lady who's their CEO is giving them downtime. They have a lot of downtime. Everything was Course in Miracles. Don't waste a moment. Read the Course, pray, meditate. Don't do anything but give your life to God. So they were all very, very quiet because they were meeting me for the first time. And then I just said, well, I'm here if anybody has anything. And then like 4 or 5 minutes of complete stillness went by, unlike this group. They had this group has a lot of questions. They were just nurses following their boss and coming to hear some guy talk about A Course in Miracles, and they were very silent. And so after like 5 minutes of complete silence, I went around the room and looked each one of them in the eye and spoke. Spirit spoke individually to each one of them. And they just had big eyes, and I addressed their addictions, their issues, their relationship issues, their struggles with authority, everything, without them saying a word. I went individually to everyone in the room, probably like 15 or 18, and they all had big eyes. But Lisa worked with them every day, so she knew all of their issues and all of their struggles because they talked to her about them every day. So she knew them, and she was the one that was astounded that in her living room, I went around the room because it was like 18 confirmations of uh-oh. Like the woman at the well with Jesus. He told me everything about my life. She went running back saying there's a prophet, a seer, a psychic or something over there by the well. She went back because he said, when he said something about who is your husband, he knew that she had multiple husbands. And she was just like this when the prophet looked her in the eye and said, like, call your husband. And then he knew everything. It was like he was so in line with the Spirit, he knew the thoughts of people, he knew their issues and everything. Before they even spoke, He was the way, the truth, and the life. And of course, we have many stories of Jesus, how he read people's minds. You know, even the woman that came in to bring some oil for his feet, and the Pharisees and scribes were there. And then he's like, why do you judge this woman? You know, to the high priest, he's reading their thoughts. He knew her thoughts. He knew how humble she was. And he was like, don't be criticizing her. Let her do what she's doing, because she was honoring the presence of love. So at that point, I did go back there. I did gatherings, and Lisa has been back and forth many times. And to this, she's down working with our mystery school, and a lot of the people that who come in a very devoted way from different parts of the world to go very deep into their mind. But to answer your question, it is through the guidance that everything opens up. And so I've not only had to pray and listen and follow for these last 36 years, but I do these gatherings and I talk about the parables of David. I talk about the way properties have come and gone, the way people have come and gone, the way we collaborate as a community for the good of the whole, the way things seem to just show up. Some people call it manifesting. We don't really call it manifesting. We just say it's divine providence. So in heaven, where God is, we would say it's not really a place, but it's all loving, all knowing, all powerful. The light simply is, and the basic principle of light extending on earth gets brought down to all that I give is given to myself. Because in this world, the sleeping mind with ego, giving and receiving are different. Giving and receiving are different. If somebody gives you $100 or somebody receives $100 from you, it's very different. But actually in heaven, there's one universal law, and that's the law of love. And that's just pure love extending. There is nothing else. There is no giving and receiving. But translate that universal light down into the world, and it's all that I give is given to myself. It's the same thing with teaching and learning. In this realm, the teacher is different from the student. And what you teach is different from what you learn. But if we look at how it actually is, all that I teach is what I learn. That I'm always teaching and learning by my thoughts. It's not just confined to overhead projectors and professors and students or therapists and clients. We're talking, all that I give is given to myself, and everything I teach is what I learned. And Jesus goes so far to say there's no one that in this world that you cannot teach, because there is no one in this world that you cannot learn from. Oh, he's teaching us to look at your thoughts and look at your mind, because the teaching and learning is actually with your thoughts. And he says, teach only love, for that is what you are. You see, he's giving us a purification process to purify our mind. And he's telling us that he even has a workbook lesson. I can be hurt by nothing but my thoughts. You see how important that is if you believe it's the images that are outside of you. The COVID virus, the storms, the tsunamis, the volcanoes. To a body, those things can seem pretty dangerous. But Jesus is saying, actually we need to come back in further than the body. We have to look at your mind. And he says, I must work with you on your thoughts. And yesterday, Chris was bringing up some things about the Nazis, and we went through some of those things, and I was saying, yeah, as long as we divide behaviors up, even to the good ones and the evil ones, the Mother Teresa's and the Hitlers, it still keeps it from seeing that the world is nothing more than a reflection of our thoughts. Even if we say, I'm going to love you both, Mother Teresa and Hitler, but you certainly are different. You are gravely different. Jesus is saying, remember what is the same and what is different, the right mind, the wrong mind. You see how he's big on discernment, because he knows that in the end, if we can discern between the true and false, the love belief system and the fear belief system in our mind, we're going to be home free. We'll make it to nirvana in heaven. And that's why Jesus could say things even from the cross, forgive them for they know not what they do. That's not usually an appropriate thing that you would expect somebody who's bleeding on a cross to say, forgive them for they know not what they do. But it was just a symbol of forgive the behaviors of everything that's going on here, because those behaviors are not causative. That this world is an unreal effect of an unreal cause, and the ego is the unreal cause. The real cause is God, and the real effect of God is the beloved child of God, a spiritual child, which Jesus calls the Christ, but you could call it anything. You could call it Atman, you could call it Buddha, you could call it any name you want, but everybody knows, even in Buddhism, that Buddha is a different name than Siddhartha. Siddhartha seems to be the time-space character that's going through the temptations and leaving the palace and hearing the beautiful song and leaving the palace, and you could say leaving all the things his father said, you'll be king and all those things. That was Siddhartha. He was going through the human stuff, but then the Buddha is like the Christ. It's a state of mind that is beyond time and space. Yes.
It's funny, I felt like sharing this all along just because I just am led to. But my gift of the disappearance of the universe, reading it, was when I was a little kid, there'd be this pixelated light matrix all over the place, eyes open, eyes closed, everywhere. And I used to think that was cool and this was real. And in reading Gary's book, the big change that happened in my life, which made all the difference, is I could do a little slight change of vision. And I see this like you're made up of a pixelated matrix, and the couch has this pixelated matrix, and the floor, and anything I look at, everywhere, and it's uniform. Eyes open, eyes closed, and it's always the same. And after a while, for me, God became the divine matrix of all that is consciously experiencing the bliss of itself. And like Star Trek holodeck, it's like there's this quantum state, there's this field, there's the pixelated matrix. And for me, that is God. And then when I started interacting with people, like at work, even in my work days there, and I'd get into some ego thing, and I'd do this little slight change of vision. And all of a sudden, I'd see this pixelated matrix in addition to the person, and it was my doorway. It was my doorway to, in a concrete way, to the uniformity of everything. And it made everything easier, even in the midst of, the interactions going on. And so it's been the biggest gift, and it feels to me my personalization and understanding of God. And like on Star Trek, you go in and you say, start program. And what we all do is forget to end program. And, we have that power.
The holodeck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, in one relationship I had, my favorite moment of this relationship was when this guy was just yelling at me. And every other time in my whole life, I would grab it and make it my own. But I never knew that until this one time when all this energy hit me and just went right on through. And we were still there in love, and I could listen. And it was the very first time I ever understood that I had the choice to either grab that emotion that was coming in and feel guilt about it and make it my own and say, well, what did I do wrong? And, all that stuff. Or just go back to that light matrix and just let it...
Yeah, and the movie The Matrix really was a kind of a shared experience for everyone, because they just went to it and they were like, walking out of the theater like, what was that? Oh my God, it was so many philosophies all put together in an action movie. And they kind of enjoyed the action movie, but then they felt like profound when they walked out, because there was a scene when basically Neo sees everything, the agents and the whole room as green, this green energy. And then the bullets come from the agent's gun, and he goes, no. And then they just stop. No. It was from a state of defense, no. Because his teacher, Morpheus, had said, because when Neo said, are you telling me I'm going to be able to dodge bullets? And Morpheus said, no, I'm telling you, you will reach a point where you won't have to dodge the bullets. And then the hand comes up, and everybody could relate to that in the context of that whole movie as a transcendent moment. And it's simply coming to an awareness that everything is mind. That is really what the Course in Miracles is teaching us. It's even a well-designed workbook of 365 lessons that go back. Starts off with lesson 1, nothing I see means anything, which is really saying nothing I perceive with my 5 senses means anything. Then lesson 2, I have given everything I see all the meaning it has for me, but already he's starting in lesson 4 to talk about thoughts. You see, he started about perception the first 3 lessons, then he comes in with thoughts, then he goes back to perception, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Ooh, he's coming back with number 10 with thoughts. Ooh, a strategy here. And he's taking us into my thoughts or images I have made. It's through the sleep of forgetfulness, through the mesmerism of the hypnosis of the ego, it seems like there's an inner world of a realm of thoughts, and then an external world that seems to be very physical, and seems to be very objective, it seems to be external. That's why oftentimes when you're talking to somebody and saying, well, emotionally I'm doing pretty good, but the world is terrible. And the external world is gone bonkers. I'm somewhat sane, but the world, you see how the distinction is made between the internal and the external. So Jesus has got a 365 workbook lessons to experientially come to that, this is the matrix, that experience you shared, that Neo goes through. And to do that, you just have to come to a realization that you're just dealing with your mind and your thoughts. There really actually is no external world. He comes right out in lesson 132, there is no world apart from what you think. And then he rolls it back even a little further where he says, there is no world, period. He doesn't even put the think part on there. He's saying, you believe in a hallucination and that's why you're upset. You believe in fiction and that's why you're upset. You believe in fantasy. It's a world of fantasy, completely. It's not like you have some real things happening and some fantasy, sexual fantasy life over here. No. It's all the same. What you believe and what you're thinking about is what you believe you are. And as long as you believe in the ego, you will be mistaken about that identity because you're the Christ. Or in Matrix terms, you are the one. And everyone is too. It's not like one is more one and one is less one. Because that can be a thing with many religions, holding people up as avatars and saints. And then you get into they're the only one and they're the only way. There's only one form that can get you there, and everybody starts to feel like it seems kind of exclusive. I don't know. To think that there's only one way to God. Yeah.
So I want to close off on the guidance one, and then we'll talk about this new stuff you're talking about. Yeah. So what I get from the guidance conversation is that the key word that needs to go with it is discernment.
Yes.
Because the ego is certainly clever enough to give you rich feelings and sensations and thoughts and conclude that's guidance from God. And it may not remotely be guidance from God.
Exactly.
So discernment, guidance without discernment is potentially a lot of nonsense.
Yes.
And the discernment, I get one thing you can check is the mood and the emotion that you have about it. And certainly one thing I've learned, if people are self-righteous, I know they're not actually speaking from God.
Yeah.
So checking the mood, and I agree. When we saw, what's his name again?
Prabhupada.
His mood.
Where's Bailey? She said, don't say the word until you repeat it
I got
20
it.
times. So I put it on my phone. Prabhupada. Bailey's 10 years old, but this is a note from God. Get this name down.
So definitely, that's great. Guidance, recognizing discernment's essential, and it really does require active discernment. That's good. When you talk about reality being a projection, what throws me there...
I don't say reality is a projection. I say reality is spirit. The world's the projection.
The world is a projection. All right. Okay, so the world as a projection. It can sound individualistic. Like this individual ego is projecting this whole world. But then that begs the question, why is so much of it shared? And that doesn't quite add up. If it's pure idealistic, yes, I only see the world I project. Now I get, in terms of nuance and meaning, yes, I can get that's individual. Yeah. But the fact that you bought a ticket to fly on an airplane from Utah to here, there's an enormous amount of shared understanding about what flying is and the aerodynamics and the engineering behind it, and so that it sounds. I can't believe it's meant in that individualistic way.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Jesus has to reach the mind with what it believes. So Jesus has a line that would be reaching what you're talking about, where he says, everyone makes an ego for himself and for everyone else. There's one ego. There's only one ego.
Okay, so it's not just a collective ego.
Even collective doesn't...
That's a big difference.
Collective,
I think people hear this, it's like my individual ego is projecting this.
But I never talk about collective, because collective is plural, it's multiple. So even to say collective ego...
Universal.
It's an universal ego, and even that, if it's a puff of nothingness, can it really be universal? If it's something that doesn't even exist, I wouldn't go so far as even using that.
Need some name in there then.
I just say it's a puff of nothingness. It's a belief. And in heaven there are no beliefs. In heaven there's just, remember, God is all knowing, all powerful, all loving, and belief is an invention. The ego was the first belief, and then it multiplied, it replicated itself like a replicating thing, as if a world of replication and replicating egos. You go to a course group, I was having a great day and I went to the course group, and this guy's ego, I tell you, that's ruined me for work tomorrow. At the course group, and I'm like, wait a minute here, it's not this guy's ego. There's only one, and it's in the mind, and it made the world to hide itself. It's a pretty intricate world too, like you're saying. So what I say, that's why it goes into the practice so deep, because in the end, when people are still going through letting go of the ego, they can claim power and authority and superiority and say, I've got to give this other person advice, and it sets up all kinds of dependencies and weird relationships. Until you transcend the ego, then even the thing of guidance, which is so crucial to the awakening, is got to be suspect based upon discernment. So that's why I've encouraged people, when you go on a spiritual journey, be discerning, explore, investigate, really ponder, use all your faculties to be clear. In the world, that's called critical thinking. I would just say it's coming to more to wise wisdom thinking. Be wise. Be wise. Be wiser than now. Be very wise on this, because to the extent that you haven't released the ego, you still will be subject to unconscious things coming up, superior, inferior, anything to say, this is unique, this is the best way, this is the only way. We've heard all those, this is the only way to God. Those are just these egoic, unconscious protests basically coming up, still afraid of the light and protesting. So for me, that's another reason why, as I went through this experience with the Course, I kept it simple, for example, let's just look at vocation. You know, Jesus says there is only one vocation, and that vocation is healing your mind. That simplifies it. From all the billions of vocations in time and space, he's just always so simple. No, you really have, your vocation is healing. And even with Lisa, when I would say, she went to a psychic one time, and the psychic said, "You're a healer," and she was like, "Well, I do have a nursing staffing company, but I'm not a healer." She was, "No, don't call me a healer. Oh, I don't want that word." But in the end, it started to get more and more aware that your healing perception, if the sickness is fragmented perception, and you start to see the world in holistic terms, like you were describing with the matrix, you start to see the world holistic terms, then you're really on the right track, because you're peaceful. When you're seeing the world in holistic terms, you're seeing from a unified purpose, and that purpose is given from the Holy Spirit, and it brings the peace. So I know for myself, I've loved to share the parables. For example, when people talk about vocation and they say, "Well, but we have to work," I say, well, if you understand the vocation of the mind, then even the concept of work will disappear. Sometimes people say, well, okay, 99.99999% of the people in all of history have had to work their butts off to try to survive. And then St. Francis comes along, and Jesus comes, give and forgive and love, and and everyone goes, Jesus, well, okay, he's a rare bird. The apostles are even struggling, but there's a rare bird. Buddha, oh, that's a rare bird. Ramana, that's a rare bird. St. Francis, that's a rare bird. Because it seemed to involve, St. Francis taught, live in simplicity and trust. And he was quoting Jesus from 12 centuries before. Look at the lilies of the field. They neither spin nor toil. And look, and they're cared for even, greater than St. Francis is. And then all of a sudden St. Francis starts to live that way. And his parents kick him out. And the whole town of Assisi, they're throwing food at him, They open the doors, and he's like, live in simplicity. Throwing, you want to eat food? Here, smack, right on the side of the face, because he's going against what? He's going against the laws of economics. He's going against the laws of scarcity. He's trying to teach what Jesus was teaching, which is what I call divine providence. That if you follow God, if you follow your intuition and spirit, everything will be provided for you without exception. That violates the laws of economics. That violates the laws of supply and demand. That violates the laws of reciprocity. That violates every single law of scarcity that this world is built upon. So I started practicing this after I got finished with 10 years of university, took a few jobs which Jesus gave me. These are helpful for you to forgive. Go work at Goodwill Industries, do this. Paid off my loans. I said, okay, here we go. I don't know how this is going to work. This is America. If you want me to travel, around, whether planes were not an option in these days. But I said, if you want me to travel around, even in a car, I'd say, you have to have gas for the car. You got to pay for and you got oil changes, And I kept telling Jesus, money does not grow on trees. Basically, this is me and Jesus, Because I was practical. I've been through 10 years of university. I've been through enough childhood and adolescence where and Jesus would say, yes. He said, yes, you believe that money does not grow on trees. It always was a you believe. You see how he would never agree with me. He would just say, yes, you believe money doesn't grow on trees. And then he would say, I'm going to have to convince you that I can take care of you. And I said, yeah, exactly. You will have to convince me, because I have a lot of past learning that says I think I need to do things to earn my survival, you see? And so that was the first 5 years where it's like Marla Morgan, she went down to walkabout in Australia, and with the Aborigines to kind of learn divine providence in her own way. And that was pretty striking for her, because they took her clothes before they started the walkabout. They had her take all her clothes off and her jewelry, and they threw them into the fire with a big smile on her face. And she was like, "You just burned my clothes and my jewelry." So she's there in her underwear, and they're like, "Come, here we go. That's how the walkabout starts. You burn your clothes and jewelry." And then she went on walkabout and wrote a whole book, Mutant Message Down Under. Jesus took me on drive-about in the United States instead of walkabout. The United States is a big place. So basically, what little money I had, he took me to a dealership to get a little 3-cylinder gold car, which the gas mileage was fantastic. He's very good at choosing vehicles. We didn't have electric vehicles, Priuses and everything down there, but that, and then I said, I don't really have a lot of money. I don't know how you have to have gas to go in a car. And Jesus is like, trust me. And where am I going to sleep? Trust me. Where am I going to get food? Trust me. Where am I going to go? Trust me. And finally it was, go west. West! This is how Jesus works. In the moment, west. And then came a series. I was listening to him and he was speaking to me, so I had to trust the instructions. I had to begin to trust in Spirit leading me moment by moment and taking care of me when I had a whole background of education. I have to take care of myself, Protestant work ethic. I had a bunch of things and a bunch of past learning. And Jesus was saying, I will convince you that I can be trusted, and I will show you that by taking care of what you believe you need through guidance, not through your means of past learning, which was get a job. I had a friend who had been in the convent since she was 14, and she started to get into the course, and she wanted to go travel with me, and a priest who wanted to travel with me on the first trip. And then the ex-nun and the priest, like cats and dogs. So I said, go have dinner, work it out. The script is already written. Let's see what's going to happen. And so they did, and then the priest made a donation so she could go. Because she was not going to be in a little 3-cylinder car with the priest after she had left the convent. It was like too big of a leap. So and she said, well, we might have to stop and do dishes, or we might have to stop, if it goes into a big trip. We don't have a lot of money, so we may have to work. And I said, well, Jesus is just working here on trust. So what I learned through the first trip, which was actually 5.5 weeks, it was all the way out through Southwest, up California, up to Whidbey Island off the coast of Seattle, across Canada up there too, and across and down back to Cincinnati. I learned in the first 5.5 week trip that Jesus sincerely was saying what he had said in the Bible and what he had said in the Course, which was, take no thought for what you should wear and eat, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all else will be added unto you, in the Bible. In the Course he said, in case you missed it in the Bible, once you have accepted his plan, the Holy Spirit's plan, is the one function you would fulfill. There will be nothing else the Holy Spirit will not arrange for you. Without your effort, he will go before you, making straight your path and leaving in your way no stones to trip on and no obstacles to bar your way. Nothing you need will be denied you, not one seeming difficulty, but will melt away before you reach it. You need take thought for nothing except the only purpose that you would fulfill. Purpose, discernment, purpose. So if we've been raised with ego purpose, survival, scarcity, lack, strive, work, do all these things that people don't really want to do, and then Jesus comes on and says, yeah, you put so much investment in the world, you work for little strips of paper that are meaningless, and then you go to buy things that you don't even need and don't even want, and do all this, and then you repeat it over and over. He's poking fun at the economic system. He pokes fun at the medical model. He says, you really believe that fluid pushed through a sharpened needle will ward off disease. Ha ha ha. He's poking fun at COVID vaccinations. The Course came out in 75, 76. Years before COVID, Jesus is poking fun at not just the COVID, the vaccinations, but the entire medical model, which is based on Newtonian physics, by the way. And he will do that with economics. You really believe you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal disc. And then he says, here's what you believe in. You believe in the laws of friendship, the laws of economics, the laws of medicine. Now, if you're going to follow Jesus, you really do have to be willing to question every value that you hold, including linear time-space. You see? He's like taking Ramana Maharshi on steroids. He takes Nisargadatta, whoom, takes off like a rocket ship. When Nisargadatta would be like, holy Christ, you are that. I'm going to rename my book. You see, I'm serious now. I'm saying,
I know about
this, I'm saying, you see how this goes. This goes really into the practical application.
I want to get to the practical.
Yeah, good,
so,
good.
So in my case, I have a medical condition, cystic fibrosis. I was told I was going to die fairly young, and fortunately I didn't. But I lived with it, and I felt it, and I coughed all the time, and was sick a lot, and anticipated a shorter lifespan, all of those things. And 2 years ago, an amazing breakthrough medicine came out, one of the truly most remarkable achievements in the pharma industry in the last 10 years. And within 24 hours of taking it, it completely changed my life. Wow. Now, that was not a function of my belief. I tried all the New Age stuff decades ago. No. And that's, you can say that, but I'm saying, no, this is like such silly nonsense. No, that was a product of people working diligently, using science with enormous care and commitment to create something that made a difference. And it did. Now, we can do kind of abstract collective ego, fine, but to say it's a level of belief of an individual, I don't buy it for a moment.
Yeah, there is no individual belief. The individual is a projection of the belief.
Okay.
And basically what Jesus would say about medicine is he has a whole category which he calls magic. Like a magic spell, like the old days of witches and the cauldrons, and they come up with a brew, and it seems to work sometimes. Mm-hmm. And what he says is magic, the reason you keep believing in it is because you have some cases, you're giving one good case right there, example, that seem to work. For Gandhi, he wasn't so much into traditional medicine. He was in Ayurveda and he was into herbs and flowers and things like that. And that was part of his belief. It wasn't so much the medical model as it was deep traditions like Ayurvedic medicine and that have been passed down for generations and generations of wisdom. But what Jesus is always doing is he's taking us back to the core, and he's saying that all illness is mental illness. I was with the DSM-3 and DSM-4. It basically, all illness is mental illness. If you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist, it's like, what? There's only mental illness? And Jesus is like, yes, exactly. There is only mental illness. You aren't aware of the mind. You've made up a brain and a body and a bunch of scientists and people that seem to work hard on cures and everything like this. But let's roll it back. Jesus is always saying, let's roll it back to reality, which is God. And saying, no matter how intricate the illusion is, no matter how magical you make it, no matter how you make up things, you make up diseases and then you make up cures. And we seem to have a series, if you look at history, a series of diseases. We have polio, then we have a polio vaccine. We have this, now we had COVID vaccine, and then variation 2, 3, 4. It's like, and a lot of inventive minds working very hard in the lab for these vaccinations even. Jesus is saying, can we come back to the start? Can we, like the man we watched, the Swami, yesterday, he was basically saying that what he learned, and this was a guy who was pharmaceuticals. He had a pharmaceutical business even, the Swami, in a family. You've got a family and a pharmaceutical, you have been very helpful for you in your daily life. But even the Swami, after all that, he remembered what his guru said, and he had this instant where he realized that the only problem there ever could be is spiritual ignorance. That's what the Swami called it yesterday, spiritual ignorance, which would be ignorant of your true identity, ignorant of the spirit. Not ignorance is not meant to be a negative, pejorative thing, it's just like not knowing. Wait a minute, God is all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful, so spiritual ignorance must be not knowing God and not knowing your identity as God created you see? And then the Course is coming along and it's almost like disregarding the idea of levels of difficulty. We have things like degree of difficulty. People say, well, I think I could maybe heal myself with God's help of a common cold. But when it comes to cancer, when it comes to heart disease or something like that, that seems to be a degree of difficulty. And Jesus was a living example that there is no degree of difficulty in healing. The sick were healed, the dead arose, and literally, even with the body of Jesus, there was a skit, a crucifixion skit and a resurrection skit. But, I always tell people, if you're looking at it from a time perspective, the crucifixion came after the resurrection, and they are like, and you're a Christian, David? You really have messed up the order of events. What do you mean the crucifixion came after the resurrection? And I say, well, before Jesus started calling his apostles, he went to the River Jordan and John the Baptist, and the dove came down, and the voice from the sky said, "This is my beloved Son, whom I'm well pleased." There's your resurrection, but the resurrection's of the mind. It's not even an event in time. And the crucifixion did not establish the redemption or the salvation. It was the resurrection. It was having a mind with no judgment. That's why his teachings on Sermon on the Mount were judge not, lest you be judged. He reached a state before judgment. He went before time, before judgment was invented by the ego. He went, back to I amness. Before Abraham was, I am. You see, he was teaching these ideas back then. Now with the Course, he's just clarifying. He's just clarifying the same thing. So, actually, practically, I had to be convinced. Like you're saying, this medicine has been a game changer, life changer for me. And I know for myself, like I say, I drink mostly just liquids now. I didn't go on the spiritual journey to fast and to stop eating. That's a byproduct. Things come, as with the mystics and saints, they're byproducts that come from just the prana energy, they say in the East, or the mana from heaven, Jesus called it. There are things that come when you get so devoted, the things that were so human in your experience, and you start to realize that they just start falling away. Even the most common, basic things, the sex drive, the hunger, the thirst, the desire for stimulation, all the things we consider to be human, it starts to go the other way. And it's not surprising when you're practicing a text that says, I am not a body, I am free, I am still as God created me. And he repeats that. It doesn't just like one shot. No, what we doing? Review lesson. I am not a body. Didn't we do this before? The next, I am review. I am not a body. I am free. I am not a body. I am free. This presence is going for something that's not worldly at all. This is spiritual awakening. This is really true.
I can track with you, I am not a body. I can track with you, it's all the unfolding of God. The medicine is that too.
Yeah.
what bothers me in the account is as though it was my individual belief that made the difference. And I don't think it did. I think
There's no such thing as individual belief.
I've seen in people talking about the course some confusion.
Yeah. There is no such thing as individual belief because the personality, the persona, if you go back to the Latin, means mask. And why would the mask have a belief? The mask is a belief. And this is where I call it, we're the kind of like the mysticism. I'm the mysticism branch of A Course in Miracles. I don't go for the intellectual stuff. I can understand this and this, but I'm like, come on, why do we keep butting heads? Let's go beyond the butt. Let's go for the actuality. Let's go for, I am one with God, as Jesus spoke, and no but. It wasn't like, I am the Holy Son of God. I am one with God, but I'm having a bad hair day. No, it's sorry. No, Jesus did not. He was a great example of, sentence ends with God. I am one with God, period. Not a comma, but. So that's where we,
Yeah, I have a question related to that, which it's like, I've heard in the Course you either accept, everything or nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm at this point in my life where it's like, I really want to be able to accept everything and fully, and there's two critical thoughts in my mind that I see as a block to fully accepting these teachings. The first is, if God is all there is, everything, all-encompassing, love, total love, why on earth would we even be doing this at all? Like, I don't understand. I would just want to totally return to source 100% and not bother with, like, if I am the mind of God and I am the one Son, if that's all, if God is all that is and I am all that is with that one, why would I not want to be there now?
Well, then you can start to be honest with yourself. Basically Jesus is saying, when you want only love, you will see nothing else.
I heard that.
And basically, if you are honest, and anybody who's a scientist wants to do their honest research, anybody who's into self-inquiry wants to inquire. That's what all the great Eastern mystics have said, and saints. Self-inquiry. There's a whole branch of self-inquiry. So when Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford asked that question, like, why would I want anything else? How could there even be anything else if God is all? Then basically Jesus said, well, you believe that there is. And he goes further to saying, not only that you believe that there is something more than God, but he's saying, you want, as a belief has to come prior to the belief is a want, is a prayer, is a desire. You had to want more than God before you could believe in the ego. You had to wish for something, like, even if you had and were everything, it could have, let's just say a crazy thought, you're just in the basking of light, and this tiny mad idea is just crossing the sky, like a little plane crossing the sky. And Jesus is saying, you had to want to believe in that thought. Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny mad idea at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. Laughter is what is appropriate for, is there more than God? Laughter. Ha ha ha. And Christ could laugh. And they always say, then there was Lucifer and fallen angels. It makes it very dramatic. Imagine Lucifer. And then all the angels, they're it's very dramatic. But what Jesus is saying, you believe it, and you have to first, just like in 12 steps, if you had an addiction and you went to a 12-step group, we all know from 12-step groups that you have to want to heal, you have to want to leave the addiction behind. And let's just say, for our purposes, the addiction is not alcohol or drugs or sex or food. but the addiction is conflict. The addiction is the belief in opposites. You know, because if God is one, then the belief in opposites. And then just supposing it was so horrific that that the light was pushed out of awareness and the darkness, too much to handle. Separation from God, ooh, no. I'm not going to handle that one. And then the projection is offered as a substitute, which is the world of opposites, pain and pleasure. You know, where we try to seek, but our seeking is aimed at the projection. So we seek to maximize pleasure and minimize pain, not realizing that they are the same. They don't feel, Jesus, they don't feel the same. Ah, yes, but the ego is clever, clever, clever. If it's going to make a trap, what better trap than to make alluring things and things that you want to avoid, you see? To reinforce the duality. You see? That's why religions, you know, that are just dualistic, heaven and hell religions, and God and the devil religions and everything, that is not really bringing into account the unconscious mind. What about Freud? What did
to bring
Young
about the end
teachers?
of this illusion, does it require that all minds are forgiven, or is it, and you know, they say the script is already written. I get that because I've had a direct experience of experiencing what I call remembering the future.
Yeah.
It's not deja vu, it's actually seeing the script itself, you know.
Yeah, even the idea that of all minds and everything, or the collective, if you listen to my teaching for the last 30 years, and they are on the internet, they're all there. Jesus had me, people go, you know, I listen to a lot of teachers, but usually they progress over time. You know, you can listen to the early, you know, the early Adyashanti, and then the middle Adyashanti, and the later, but they go, you know what? I'm going back to your teachings from the 1990s. This is 2022. And he's like, you are teaching the same thing. You are teaching the identical same thing. You haven't progressed one bit. And I said, thank you very much. What is the same? And the discernment, what is different? You know, the discernment's in the mind. So I say, thank you, that's a compliment. Good, progress one bit. They say, sometimes you speak a little slower, or you have more pauses, or we try to do that. But they say, basically, the metaphysics, you're teaching the same metaphysics. The metaphysics of the course are just top of the line. And the Indians made great inroads at that. They did. You have to admit that there's no country where you have so many people that, you know, I am that, and Ramana Maharshi, and so on and so forth. But when you get to the course, that's primo. People talk about primo, that's primo metaphysics. But even the primo metaphysics won't help you unless you apply them, unless you bring full practical application. In answer to your question, there are not many minds. There's only one. That's a product of the ego, the belief in many minds. We have 7.8 billion people, so 7.8 billion different minds. What about the plants? Okay, let's include, what about the animals? What about Ginger? Doesn't she have a mind of her own on certain days? She's like, no, I don't. she curls up. No, there's only one mind, but the ego is the belief in private thoughts and private minds. You see? So when we're concerned about what other people think about us, we believe there's other people actually out there in the external world thinking of us. You see? Okay, here comes Mari. She's
Okay, I have many questions, but I have one. Okay, anyway.
she's joining in.
Yeah, okay, I try my best to think positive, to meditate, and 1 year ago I think I was another person. I'm improving little by little. I know that I'm not there yet. I'm trying my best. But it's like 3 days that I pray, try to think positive, try not to fight with my children, my husband, and I had a good day. I sleep. The next day I wake up angry, having anxiety, having depression, don't understand. I just moved here. Why did I do this? Very confused, very equivocated mind. And I try to find out the meaning. Like when I pray and I'm trying to thinking positive, am I really doing that? Am I positive, or I'm doing with my ego I'm not getting there? I'm not getting what I want. I can't get the peace of mind I wish to have. Because at the moment, the only thing I want is like the lady call you say, joy, I want to be at peace. That's all I want.
Yeah.
And it's been hard for me to get there.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah. Well, there was a very famous song way back many, many years. You've got to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Don't go for Mr. In-Between. Well, Jesus is saying, go for Mr. In-Between. Buddha, remember the Buddha said the middle road? If you pull the string on the instrument, too tight, it will snap and break. And if the string is too loose, it will not play. Go for the middle way. Yeah, let's go into Buddha and Jesus. Maybe these were way showers that had something to teach us. Maybe what the world calls the positive and what the world calls the negative are just judgments. Okay. Maybe there's the present moment, which is not subject to the past or the future. Let's say the present moment is the gateway to eternity. And let's say when you meditate, you desire to be fully present. And when you pray, you're really praying, God, please help me be fully present. If I'm thinking about my regrets and the coulda, woulda, shouldas with my family or my body or my profession or anything, then I'm going to be caught up into the past. And if I'm thinking of the future, the worries, the concerns, how will this turn out? How will my children turn out? Will I stay together with my husband? All ego can throw a lot of... But the Course is really saying that the present moment, which Jesus calls the holy instant, because it's the closest approximation to eternity that the world offers, that present moment offers everything. So what I'm telling people is, no matter what topic I talk about, whether it's sickness and healing or medicine or vocation or relationships or whatever, I'm just saying that the present moment holds everything. Because of who we were created. We were created as everything. And if the present moment is the closest approximation of eternity that the world offers, then that makes it exciting. Here we seem to be in Northern California, in Lafayette, in a house, and Chris and Ruth who provided for us and everything, but that's just the presenting, this is the backdrop, this is the theater. This is like Shakespeare's theater, or like the Apollo Theater, or a theater, a stage. So the issues that we struggle with are really thought issues and belief issues, but because the world is a motion picture of our consciousness, we perceive the issues as very specific. Jesus is trying to teach us that all the specific problems have one origin, and that's the ego. And he's always focused in unwinding from the ego, because that will free us. So like when I first went traveling with Jesus, a 5.5 week trip, I believed in all kinds of, where's the gasoline going to come from? Where's the food? Where am I going to sleep? He didn't tell me it would be 5.5 weeks either. I thought he might have me on the road for a week and go west. That's not very specific. I'm in Cincinnati. There's a lot of west. With what? With what? How am I going to eat? Where am I going to sleep? How am I going to put gas in the car? And I don't know a lot of people. I was shy. I didn't even like to travel. I don't even like to travel. And you're taking me to go west in a little car, a little metal car. You see, this is the good setup for learning to trust, learning that it's all mind, learning that if you follow the guidance, people will show up. People I was at a campground, I think maybe the second night out. I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think it was maybe my third night out, and then I went to the last 10 minutes of a course group that I was guided to. 10 minutes from being finished. I'm like, I can't go in there. It's over at noon. It's 10 minutes to noon. Jesus is like, yeah, go in. And I was like, but that's really weird to go to the last 10 minutes of a course group. How am I going to even explain it? He said, just go in. So I went in, quietly sat down. They were talking sexuality, big heated discussion. Then, when did you come? I just was. Where did you come from? Traveling. Go, come to lunch. Come on, and then come stay at my house and come out on my houseboat and share about the course. It was literally like time and space were being expanded and arranged. But it started with go into that course group, and I'm like me protesting. Is it 10 minutes? I feel a little embarrassed. Go. You see, that it took the willingness to follow in spite of the embarrassment, in spite of the feelings. And that's what we all are going through. We do have intuitive selves. We have great intuitive guidance. And I always tell people the goal of the course is just to be 100% intuitive and 0% analytical. You see, that was a big switch for me because I was engineering, urban planning. Yeah.
I just feel moved to share something because these points that you're making that have been being made all kind of my experience with the present moment and healing and belief. These different threads that we've had and the Holy Spirit has led me in my life to do very deep healing through the body, understanding that as a projection of my mind, and being in the present moment with the pain, sort of like Jesus sits with the broken and those that are the outcast. I sit within my body, feeling that which is broken and which is unforgiven, and through that, it is revealed to me where I am not forgiving, and it's layer after layer, as you say. But it goes so deep and I've been taken on these paths that have gone into the deepest darkness of the worst trauma, and working with other people too, and bringing that to this being with, and where am I not forgiving, and where am I not forgiving, and where am I not forgiving, as opposed to it's not belief so much. It's just where is my mind not forgiving, and the healing is happening. The body is shifting. The body is healing from all kinds of chronic things, and I've seen in other people as well. But that's just the byproduct. It's really this, and how I hear your story of this amazing thing. It's like I've seen that too, where it's like we need reprieves. The Holy Spirit brings in individual help to be able to come to a place where we can be with what's unforgiven. And sometimes we need that outside help. We need the medicine. We need this or that to be given that reprieve so that we can continue this work of forgiveness. And I'm just I don't know. I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, it's all true. It is all belief, though. We can't deny that even forgiveness is a belief. And it's the most helpful belief, but there's so many others that have been like traumas. And I was talking the other day, I was saying that beliefs are just assumptions. Beliefs are decisions that have been pushed out of awareness, is what Jesus teaches us. So it's a decision that was made unconsciously, and now there's no access to it. It's out of awareness. And nobody likes to be driven by something that is out of awareness. The whole point is to be aware, and to ultimately be fully aware. But there's nothing to push away. As long as we believe in an external world, Jesus says, there'll be special agents that will come that will be acting out your thoughts and beliefs, that will be helpful. Those agents can be people, nurses, doctors, they can be medicines. He's saying magic is something that that you can turn to when you're too afraid of healing. When you're afraid of the light and the healing, then he says sometimes a mixture of magic and miracle is necessary. You see, almost like still a potion of like, here, this is what you can use that will practically work. And we were talking the first day of even about psychedelics, how psychedelics and certain psychedelics can give you a glimpse or a reprieve to face traumas that you never were even willing to go for, and that's a whole therapy, and that's your practice with working with people and yourself. So it's beautiful because it's very non-compromising, the message, but it's also very gentle and loving, saying you will never be thrust upon into something that you can't handle. You know, you won't be hurled into reality. I like the way that he says you will actually be taken there gently, and as you have more recognitions and you're more willing to take the higher interpretation of things, then the fear level goes down.
I'm confused though. You said earlier there is no belief, is only just the universal belief when we were talking about that, and then when I was talking about forgiveness, you said that's belief. So could you say more about that, please?
Yeah. That forgiveness is the only helpful belief in the mind. That the ego is a belief system, but as I said earlier, the Holy Spirit can use what the ego made to unwind the mind from the ego. So in heaven there is no forgiveness. The most striking passage in the Course is God does not forgive, for God has never condemned. And there must be condemnation first before forgiveness is necessary. All of us can resonate. Okay, all right, God does not forgive. Okay, let's say that the realm of God is all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful. That's not our curriculum. Our curriculum is forgiveness. So forgiveness is a belief, but it's also a belief that knows that everything is mind. It's all unified. It's like a belief in the quantum field that you were talking about. If you're going to believe in something, that everything's connected, like the quantum physicist, they go in, they go quantum mechanics, and then they discover the quantum field, and it scares them to no end. Even Einstein, spooky action at a distance. When you start off your description with spooky, there's some fear there. And they were afraid for their own profession, for losing their livelihood. They didn't want to publish the findings. But the quantum field, and Sundari mentioned that too, will say that's forgiveness, where everything is still perceptual, but it's unified. So that is what forgiveness is. Now, everything in our mind that is a specific belief of the ego, which could be gravity, it could be all the laws of thermodynamics, it could be the laws of economics, the laws of medicine, the laws of good relationships and bad relationships, the laws of good friendships and bad friendships. It could be anything. Those are all concepts and beliefs as well. And none of them are helpful. None of them. That's why we have to empty the mind of everything we think and think we know to come back to the quantum field. Because when the quantum physicists discovered this, that boggled their mind to no end. Like, how can it all be connected? Through time and space, that was the most boggling discovery of all. How can you do with this on one particle, molecule, and then many thousands of years, distances away, the same action happens. That was showing the interconnectedness. They didn't even call it the quantum field at first. I think the word that the scientists came up for that was entanglement. That's a scientific word for the entanglement. You see how it is? But we would laugh, It sounds like, can you come up with a better word than entanglement? Giantness would be...
No, jointedness.
Jointedness, there you go. From a scientist, she's like speaking now for the scientific community. She's relabeling entanglement.
I like entanglement because that's how it feels.
Yeah.
That's the experience.
But it's all energy. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So that was their term. But the thing about it is that's why the guidance is so important, because the way back to that forgiveness or the happy dream, this is the way I like to think of it. Happy dream. Happy dream. Dreams come true not because they are dreams, but because they are happy. Wow, that Jesus really is speaking from a place of experience. Dreams come true not because they're true, but because they're happy. That is telling us that the state of mind of happiness is essential to forgiveness.
And forgiveness is the one helpful belief in this
Yes.
world. So connecting the belief and the forgiveness.
Yes,
as you were saying.
that's it. That's the one helpful belief. It's the needle in the haystack. I think I said on the first day here, I said there's a part in the workbook where Jesus says, salvation is among the thoughts in your mind. Find it. That's beautiful. That's direct.
Yeah, and the healing is my way of understanding the healing process is that purification of the mind.
Yeah.
The forgiveness of dark thoughts.
Yeah. We bring the darkness to the light, which is different from trying to bring the light into the darkness, which is pretty much, most religions have been trying to bring the light into the darkness, spiritualizing. For example, the Ganges River, is in India is said to be the holy river. I've been there. I've touched it and everything, but Jesus would say the holiest spot on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. You see how he takes it way off the river. The holiest spot on earth is where an ancient hatred has become a present love. So that's the master, that's the way shower who's just telling us, don't get into the practice of trying to bring God into the world. Get into the practice of bringing everything you believe and everything you think to the light of God, and it will disappear, and then you'll see that you are the light. So that's a beautiful practice. Yes.
My question is a little mathematical, let's say, or like practical. It's regarding what Chris said, that he took a medication, and I believe in medication because all the medications are made from the planet Earth. They don't come from nowhere else. It's just a manipulation through study, like your studios do. And then there is the mushrooms and the existence of the wisdom through the mushrooms. That I don't know where it's coming from, but seems like came from another planet, right? And then there is us, the human beings, and the plants, and the animals. We all have the same. We eat from one place and we put waste in another one. And then we live in this planet as a body that's physical. And then we have some animation on the body. I'm trying to put all this puzzle together, right? Then we have the soul, we have the mind, that's the drama, and then we have the ego, right? And all this, there is this field of energy. That if the energy is not so good, then your body is going to begin to break down. I'm trying to understand where the body breaks down, even the mind, that you can come with a psychological disease. You can be, who knows, like those people who kill everybody in the corner, right? Then I'm trying to find this equilibrium, and I see the babies here, and I see a new couple trying to make it. I mean, this is all our story. We are all here together on the same boat. And how can we make sense of this? I mean, when is that child that is just born gonna get this trauma that is he needs to forgive? Do you know what happened to us as human beings that today we are all here on the same boat? And we are just a little example of what goes around the planet. I know that. And then, we have the trust of the nature that is here to protect us. And then when you open a tree, when you cut a leaf, it's the same as us. When you go in a cell, you look, oh, the heck is the same as I am.
Yeah,
That's
well,
weird.
I'll address all that.
Thank you.
Some of you can relate. A lot of us in here, has everybody in here gone through some schooling?
Yeah,
And when you-
everybody.
yeah, some level of schooling. Then when you go to school, the teacher's there and teaching and the blackboard and then at some point homework or, you start to get taught something. But the problem with education, and my mother was an educator and I spent lots of years in university full-time and a lot of education, high school and all the grade school and so forth. But the problem with education is that education is the problem. This world, Jesus says, this world is learned. This world is not reality. Chris slipped and said, "You're saying this?" Believe me, God is the creator of reality, and reality is spirit, and this world has nothing to do with spirit. There's not even if you wait for a few bright rays to come through, when you start to forgive, things do start to light up a bit. But even in the unified field, Jesus will say, there's more than the unified field. There's more than fully awakened consciousness, because consciousness is the domain of the ego. So you can call it Christ consciousness if you want, or Krishna consciousness. It's still not it. Still not it. So the interesting thing is, since I went through so much education, that I realized that Jesus, when Jesus says, you continued learning and overlearning a very complex fictional world, and never did you pause for one instant to ask why. Why am I building? Why am I learning? And so I was in university for 10 years, and then I ended up in school psychology, and then suddenly when I was in graduate school working on my master's, I got interested in all the different kinds of homeschooling and all the Krishnamurti's schools, and let's find the far reaches, the best reaches of education. And then finally I got into, my professors hated this, I got into unschooling. They were like, and you're on scholarship. What? I got into unschooling, I got into undoing, I got into unlearning. I just started to get into all that, and then the course came. And Jesus was like, rah, 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 pom-poms, rah, rah, rah. A big hit for the learned ones to start to realize that learning, education as we define education, is the problem. Now, if education is the problem, then let's go a little step beyond that. What about education is the problem? Even when Jesus says you have to learn to forgive, he's really meaning you have to unlearn everything you've ever learned in your life. And he calls it learning, to forgive. All this. I've had people write to me, they say, the whole course is unlearning. And I'm like, okay, now you're realizing what we're doing. Hit it in reverse. First gear, second, third, fourth, fifth, reverse. Now the problem with education is that the basic premise of learning is when you read a book, a chemistry book, any book and everything, you're reading that book to learn something. And then after you learn it, you want to apply it. And the formula is, I want to read it, I want to learn it, and I want to apply it. Okay? That's it. Let's be honest. That's what education is about. Now, what Jesus is saying is that you are going through your reading and learning in an attempt, because what you're going for is understanding. You're going through understanding through the reading and the learning of words. And he says, let me tell you something. Those words that you're using to learn, those are symbols of symbols twice removed from reality. You're using the instruments of illusion to try to learn. Oh, that's gonna put a big pop under the learning, the desire to learn in education. If the symbols are symbols of symbols twice removed from reality, how am I going to reach reality through the symbols of symbols? Jesus is like, you aren't. Oh, now we're getting something. Now we're getting somewhere. So follow me. Now, what the premise, the formula is: read, study, learn, understand, apply. And there's even jokes about those who are in university that never really graduate. They become professors, and they're too afraid to do. They just want to learn, and they're too afraid to go to the world and actually put it in application. They're professional students and professional teachers, afraid to leave the ivory tower, go out. But Jesus is saying, wait a minute now, your whole formula, read, study, learn, understand, apply. He's like, the problem is that you don't come to understanding through read, study, learn. Right. That peace and understanding go together and cannot be found apart. That you don't understand anything at all until your mind is perfectly peaceful. And then you understand. So the understanding is not coming after. This is why the most Course in Miracles students make this big mistake. They believe they can learn the Course intellectually, and then when I come and start sharing my ideas with them, they say, David, I understand that intellectually, but... And I'm like, ha! Aha! The but gives it away. But what? But... And then there's the exception. You see? The but brings the exception. So I'm saying, like, it's more wise to say, like the early workbook lessons, I don't understand anything I see. I don't understand anything I think. I don't understand. It's more honest. It's more honest to say, I don't understand anything I believe. And that's what helps us get out of what I call the I know mind, because the I know mind is educated. And you can see Jesus is trying to draw us back into the present moment where we relinquish our education in favor of love and light, in favor of peace. I love that teaching, peace and understanding go together and cannot be found apart. That was important for me, because then I was like, wait a minute, I'm a lifelong learner. And you're telling me that peace and understanding go together. So if I'm not peaceful, then I must have learned something that is not serving the peace. I must still believe something that's not peaceful. We just talked about forgiveness. That's peaceful. That's why Jesus says, if you want to learn this course, learn to forgive. But his definition of forgiveness is so different than the world's. He's saying, forgive your brother, forgive your sister for what they have not done. Yeah. Whoa, that's different. That's different. That should be a clue right away. Forgive your brother or your sister for what they have not done. That must mean I have a perceptual problem. If I'm holding a grievance, either they did it to me and darn it, I don't like that at all, or maybe I was completely mistaken, like Krishnamurti, completely. You know nothing, completely. You must completely forgive. You see, you get excited about that, because then you start to, that means your prayer is for the peace. You pray to be happy. That's really when you're praying. You're meditating, you're praying for happiness, you're praying for peace. And it takes you more into this eyes of wonder, where people go, wow, I've heard that for years. David's not all there. He doesn't have all of his marbles. I think they're compliments. I say, I don't have all my marbles. I think you're right. I hope you're right. But you see the difference, how that Jesus intercepts the learning model. Even the scientific model, very flawed, because The scientific model is based on the teachings of Isaac Newton, who basically said you've got a perceptual world and we need to study it. And he developed a very good scientific method for studying. He tried to bias and double bias experiments and everything, but the premise was mistaken because he believed that there really was a world there that could be studied with experiments. And people always say, David, research shows, and I'm like, it's all Newtonian. Don't give me this research shows. I'm not interested in what research. I'm interested in peace. I'm interested in joy. I'm interested in love and happiness. But you realize everything has to kind of get turned on its head to do that. Because you can't come to God like empirically when empiricism was invented by the ego to keep you from knowing God and to keep you from knowing yourself. So this is how deep the teachings go, and it turns around.
Well, just on Lilian's question, since I have a granddaughter, and since she's been 3 months old, I've been taking care of her 10 to 11 hours a day, 3 days a week, and and every day I've been singing to her about her light and her, remember your light, remember your love, remember you are entwined with God above, and the consciousness has been so amazing. It's much different than a parent. Being when I was a parent. Her focus was on light. There's this underlying memory or template where the entire consciousness focus is looking for the light, for the light in each room, in the sky, and then, so 2 weeks ago, there was one day, and I'd never seen fear in her, never. And one day at 10 months, all of a sudden during the week, there were 4 or 5 fear situations. And it was amazing to me to see this little person all of a sudden have fear descend, ocean waves and ambulance sirens. Things that wouldn't touch her other than in awe before that moment. Mm-hmm. And I've been really wondering about that. Sort of on the line of that.
Yeah, Lillian was bringing that
so
up
striking
with the babies.
From nowhere.
Yeah. But where did it come from? Yeah, like it suddenly appeared.
Well, it suddenly appeared. The template of fear suddenly appeared at 10 and a half months. And I've been fascinated by watching that process. And really, I can say up till that point, the primary interest in her life was light. In a really profound way. Yeah. And she's been teaching me about that. She's my teacher of pure presence. Yeah. And so that's been, oh my gosh.
It's beautiful because, again, I think the metaphysics are so helpful explaining that, because remember, the world is an unreal effect. Time-space is an unreal effect that comes from an unreal cause. The ego is an unreal cause. God didn't create it. It doesn't have a source. It's a bastard child. It has no parent. The ego has no source, so it's this puff of nothingness. But if you believe in it with a powerful mind, let's say God created you with a hugely powerful mind, because your mind is like God's mind. It's all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful. If you give a powerful mind to a puff of nothingness, it's like having a nuclear device set off by a button, and you have a baby crawling through the floor, and Chris is like, keep the baby away from that. Just let mom can feed him and everything, but just listen. I don't know how it got in my house, but it's got enough explosives to blow up the whole planet. So just don't let the baby. But it would be like a baby. Go ahead. Big bang. The baby hits the device. It's a big bang. So ultimately, what we have to do is we have to come back to the point that we're going prior to the Big Bang, because that's our truth and our existence. And then when we start to look at the world, since it's unreal effects from unreal cause, we can see that the world only offers reflections. And Jesus says the world was made in hatred. Ooh, the world was made in hatred. That's not what it says in Genesis. The world was made in hatred. God created it. It took 6 days and then he rested on the seventh day. No, the world was made in hatred. He goes on to say in the workbook, the world was made as an attack upon God, a place where God could enter not. Whoa, I've read all the non-dual texts, but say that again. The world was made as an attack upon God, a place where God could enter not. Okay, now we're starting to get a picture of this ego. Now we're starting to get, okay, I'm ready to be a mystic now. Maybe I was a dentist before, but I'm going to shift it into gear here. Because we see things that seem to be going along, la da 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 da, la 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 la, and then, the fear, like with your granddaughter. I remember one time I always loved John Lennon and the Beatles and Yoko, and I watched this movie called Above Us Only Sky, and it really showed a lot more of Yoko. It actually interviewed Yoko a lot. And Yoko, when she was a little girl, she was living in Japan, and she had a little brother who was, she said, I had the happiest little brother. I loved being around my little brother because he was always so happy. Like, you have a happy child, you know what it's like to have a happy child in your house. So Yoko, and a little girl, is a younger brother who's happy. He's always happy. And then one day, some event happened, like with your granddaughter. Hydrogen bombs were dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It was just an event in the world. And Yoko looked at her happy little brother, and she saw in his face something that she had never seen before after those bombs were dropped, because they were evacuating and moving people. And as the days went on, her little brother wasn't happy. He said, I'm hungry. He's telling her, I'm hungry. And here she is, and she's like, she adores this little brother. And she's like, so that's when this active imagination got triggered in Yoko to try to bring love to her little brother in the best way. She'd said, come over with me, let's make a little table here. And she prepared imaginary food, and they ate the imaginary food, and a smile came back. And we know Yoko, we know she was the big inspiration for John. That song, Imagine, those ideas are coming from Yoko. That's not coming from a boy from Liverpool. That's coming from a woman who's grown up with that kind of history, and she started to tap into her imagination to bring love, to bring safety, to bring comfort when there was nothing else. They had no food, but the bombs had dropped, and she was determined. So that's why a lot of her books are more about dismantling. If you read Yoko's books, they're more about dismantling and undoing than anything else. She was a master poet and writer to let go of the imagination things that we were dependent on and come back into the mind, you see? So that's just a good example of how unlearning and undoing can be done out of love, because she was trying to comfort. She was trying to comfort her little brother. Feel like you want to read or play?
Read.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes. Interesting.
I had a little request this morning about the journey home.
Okay.
And maybe I will sing that about it. And it fits well with what you've been talking about, so it's perfect.
dream I'm ready to leave this crazy scene for good. Wake me from the dream. Please take me and bring me safe back home again. I put my wings back on and fly home to you. I remember who I am and what is true. You have shown me another way to live in love, such a happy life in joy and peace above. Wake me from the dream. I'm ready to give my life and trust in you. Wake me from the dream and guide me to live a life in peace and joy. I put my wings back on and fly home to you. I remember who I am and what is true. You have shown me another way to live in love, such a happy life in joy and peace above. Bright light that shines and shows me the way to go. Your love has brought me back on track. I am home. Bright light that shines and shows me the way to go. Your love has brought me back on track. I am home. Wake me from the dream. I'm ready to leave this crazy scene for good. Wake me from the dream. Please take me and bring me safe back home again. I put my wings back on and fly home to you. I remember who I am and what is true. You have shown me another way to live in love, such a happy life in joy and peace above. A happy life in peace and love.
Cute. Yeah. 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Do another one?
Yeah, I can sing another one. This is kind of one of the newest ones. It's on the last album. It's called Fade Away. I love singing that song. Away, away, I fade away, free, so free. It's time to be. I looked for love in all the wrong places until I found you. I looked for love in different faces until I saw you. Safe, so safe, I fade away. Loved, so loved, here I will stay. I looked for love in all the wrong places until I found you. I looked for love in different faces until I saw you. You. I saw you. I found you. I looked for love in you.
Lead away. Oh.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
You just feel just being drawn inward. Yeah, what a blessing. What a blessing. Yeah, it's beautiful to have a natural curiosity for spirituality and going inward, and then you go with it and you allow yourself to bring up your questions, and then you just start surrendering, like you're in the tractor beam. You're in the tractor beam of love, and like the old Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty. You just are like, that's your prayer, just take me into the light. And then, of course, anything that isn't the light that's still in mind will come up and be acted out generously in front of us. You might not use the word generous at the time when it's happening, but actually it is for a blessing. Like I say, the world's not happening to you, the world's happening for you. And that's really the perspective of the plan. You know, it's all things working together for good, all things appearing so that they may be seen for what they are. And if they're unconscious, then your prayer is, let me see what I need to see and release what I need to release so that I may know you and I may know who I am. And that's a beautiful perspective. It's a reframing of everything when you start to think, this is happening for me. How am I feeling here? Is this really what I want to feel, or is there something else that I'm calling, yearning for? This is just coming to make an appearance. And there's a line in the Course where Jesus is talking about patience in the Manual for Teachers, and he says, patience is natural to those who trust. No outcome already seen or yet to come can cause them fear. That's a beautiful sentence. No outcome already seen or yet to come can cause them fear. He's still encouraging us to come to the present moment, to let go of the past, let go of the future. Even in psychology, there's so many defense mechanisms, but it's interesting when you get to the Course, Jesus describes in one sentence, he describes the past and the future as defenses. You know, we've heard about repression and denial and projection, but the past is a defense and the future is a defense of change of focus in the present moment. He says these concerns are but defenses against present change of focus. And that focus is one from hatred and fear and pain and guilt to one of forgiveness, to change our focus. He's just like saying, change your tune. Sing a happy tune when you watch this world. Just sing with me. Sing along with me. That's my experience of Jesus. He's very humorous, always joking, pointing things out to me, just reframing things always. If I start to think it's something serious happening, then I have this gentle presence inside, laughing, and usually it's like, okay, what is so funny here? Initially, this does not seem funny, and then the laughter is so strong in there, like, come see it with me. Come see it with me. It really is funny. And then you go from a life where you are looking for comedy shows, comedy sitcoms, stand-up comedians, to you can start to read the headlines, the daily headlines, and you start to burst into laughter, and you think, this, for no apparent reason, I am laughing at this headline, and it must be like the divine comedy, starting to see the comedy, that the only problem was forgetting to laugh at the ego, and that Jesus is always saying, he does say the world will end in laughter, because it was a place of sorrow. And he also says things like, when he's asked, how will the world end? Can what has no beginning really have an end. You see, he addresses a question with another question. You may think it may take a long, long time to completely change your mind about this world. And he says, but how long is an instant? So the question is, how long will this take me to wake up? And how long is an instant? Join with me for one instant, my beloved. One instant. Give me your full faith, your full desire, your full belief. That sounds like the commandments in the Bible. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Wow, those first two commandments, that's what Jesus spoke the most on. He really wasn't big on 3 through 10. He just, boom. Love your neighbor as yourself, because your neighbor is literally yourself. We are the same one. And what a beautiful teaching. But to apply that, like you say, how do I apply that at work? Well, you have to give up all your concepts of work. Even Khalil Gibran wrote that little book, The Prophet. And they speak to us, Almitra, speak to us of work. When you work with love. Oh, here we go again. It's the same thing. Speak to us of children. He says, your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Wow. They come through you, but they are not of you. And then he talks about them being like arrows. The archer pulls to shoot into the infinite. Wow, that's my children? They're going to be arrows for me to reach back to the infinite? The infinite before time was? Whoa, that's a different view of children. And thank you, Khalil Gibran, whoa. That's why I read that little book. It was like this big, but I was like, ooh. Because it can be a small book, but then when you take it in and you start to apply it in a strong way, then you're like, wow, this is profound, that's the feeling. Yeah.
I have a question. What is your understanding of the insane moment when we separated from the light, from our oneness with God?
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know when he talks about the tiny tick of time, and I think the best workbook lesson for me with that what you're describing is, only an instant does this world endure. And in that lesson, he's like saying, let's go back and look for a moment at that tiny tick of time, what you're bringing up.
Yes.
He's in that workbook lesson, he's saying, let's look at it. And when he says, only an instant does this world endure, he's basically saying, and this is the ultimate discernment, he's saying, just like a computer is run on the binary system, your mind, when it's sleeping, is running on a binary system. And you're just vacillating back and forth very rapidly in your mind between the unholy instant and the holy instant. The unholy instant is the time of terror when fear seemed to arise, and Jesus tells us it was handled simultaneously. It didn't even go like that. The Holy Spirit is quicker than that. And he says, so the answer has been given, and yet you must accept it. You must accept it. And in order to fully go into the holy instant, you must accept it. And he said, you can't even prepare for that holy instant without placing it in the future. You see, preparation and practice are concepts that imply time. you can't even talk about preparation or practice without the time idea. And he's saying, if you try to prepare for the holy instant, you will place it in the future and you won't find it. So he's saying, in the end, his whole book, which is all about preparation and lessons and everything, but holy Christ, yeah, this is deeper than... Now you're saying, what is you saying in lesson 189? Forget this world, forget this course, and come with holy empty hands unto your God. You know where he's going with this. He's zooming us into the present moment. He's zooming us. He's telling us, every miracle you allow to come through you saves 1,000 years as you conceive it. Just a miracle collapses 1,000 years of time as you perceive it. So this is the way shower showing us. But what he's saying is he describes that moment you're describing as a tiny little gap in the mind. I was talking maybe a week or two ago. Imagine your mind is just all light and love. And then there's this tiny little dot. In all this infinite light and love, there's this just one tiny dark spot. And he says, you believe you're in that little spot. You are the light. He says in the Course, in the Bible, he said the kingdom of heaven is within. In the Course he says, actually the word within is unnecessary. The kingdom of heaven is you. So he's saying that light is you. You were created as that light by God. But there's this tiny speck, this tiny spot, this tiny dot. And everything you perceive about this whole world, and the galaxies and the cosmos and everything, is all within that little spot, a little black spot in a world, in a mind of light. So that's why he's calling us to join him to go past the gap. He uses that word gap. He's not talking about buying jeans. He's actually saying, come with me and let's look upon this gap. And I want you to see its unreality. Because it's not a creation of God, and because God is all, and only what God creates is real, then he's saying, experientially and practically speaking, we have to be able to look at this dot, because the dot is where the shame is. The dot is where the darkness is, the pain, the hurt. Let's look at that gap. So, for me, I love that lesson, only an instant does this world endure, because there's so many ideas in that instant. I even have a song, a friend of mine made a song about that, and it's intense. I thought, she's got a beautiful voice, Elisa Amor. And she sings that lesson, and it's very, very intense, but it's very beautiful. Because what it is it's basically echoing the things that the masters have said, like Jesus, like Ramana Maharshi, basically saying that if something's meant to happen, there's nothing that can prevent it from happening, and if something's not meant to happen, there's nothing you can do to make it happen. Isn't that a relaxing idea?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you really just give your mind over to that takes out all the coulda, woulda, shouldas, and I'm not enough, I need to do more, and everything. So that's how I like to look at the world, where I start to say, I'm just beholding the world as I want it to be. And nothing can happen unless I want it to happen. And there's nothing missing. And I'm just starting to use that idea to recognize the power of my mind. Only an instant does this world endure. And what happens is what I desire. And what does not occur is what I do not want to happen. That's from Jesus. What happens is what I desire. And what does not occur is what I do not want to happen. It's like he's using some teaching to bring me to the idea that all that I give is given to myself. That maybe the law of karma is just a reflection of giving and receiving are the same. And maybe John Lennon had it right when he wrote a song. He loved the East, but he wrote a song called Instant Karma. Oh, that starts to blow the whole idea of karma, because when you talk about it with souls and reincarnation, it's very linear. Maybe instant karma is bringing it back to what happens is what I desire, and what does not occur is what I do not want to happen. You see, Ramana taught the same thing. It's very strikingly simple. But if that is the case, if that's actually the case, there's no abuse, there's no victimization. What happens is what I desire. What does not occur is what I do not want to happen. You see? And if there's no abuse and there's no victimization, there's no fear.
You can relax.
How do you hold that thought, that belief, that perspective, if you are being in the same room with a child that has been deeply abused and hurt? You don't say that to the child.
No, you don't. You actually will just be in that presence, because Jesus has always said, I will speak through you, I will put the words in your mouth. You don't make a formula, you don't pre-plan, you don't try to prepare a therapy for that. You show up in presence. And I have been in those situations different times. I remember one time I had a group of students that were with me, and I think we maybe were in Ohio or Michigan, and I could tell by the woman who started, she had watched, what's the Barbara Streisand movie that was about abuse and victimization? It was one of her early movies, but she played in it, and the woman started speaking about that movie, and then I could feel where she was going to go, because she was just starting in the gathering to allow the horror and the pain of that to come up in memory. And then afterwards I just turned and I turned to one of those female students of mine, and I said, why don't you go with her in another room, because I knew that she couldn't actually hear anything from a male voice. And Jesus knew that. And then my student went in with her, and they went through this healing process together. But that's another part of how Jesus says, basically you need to step back and let Him lead the way. You need to give it to the Holy Spirit with every situation. I mean, in these 44 countries I've traveled in and over these decades, of course I was in third world countries, as they're called in the world, and many situations in India and rural Argentina and Colombia with people with guns and rifles. Back in the days in Colombia when they had civil war going on and the guerrillas, I was there. I was over in Venezuela when the president of Venezuela was running war games to prevent an attack from the United States to steal the oil and the oil fields. And so Jesus has taken me in many, many situations, but in all situations, again, the only function I had was to be clear of my purpose. Your purpose is everything. The purpose brings forth to the situation. It brings meaning to the situation. The ego will judge certain situations as fearful or dangerous, and other situations as safe. But in the end, what I've been teaching for many years is that the problem is situational thinking. We have learned to think in terms of situations. And what I would say is, when does a situation begin and when does it end? If it's all the same and it's all simultaneous, if it's all happening simultaneously in one instant. This is where your lesson of the unholy instant, in that gap is all of history, is all of time and space, is all of that loaf of bread I talked about with Brian Greene and this big loaf of bread. That entire long loaf of bread is in that little spot. And you see, this is why we have to really practice this and give ourselves over. What if you just right now decided to devote your entire life to the holy instant, which is the replacement for the unholy instant? What if you just thought, what if that was your interpretation of positive thinking? Instead of positive thinking, I'm going for the light. That's literally beyond positive and negative, it's literally prior to positive and negative, that can be a devotion. And when you give yourself over to that holy instant, which is actually how the Course in Miracles workbook ends. Anybody remember the last 5 lessons? 361, 2, 3, 4, 5. The last 5 lessons of the Course workbook. This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would but follow. Whoa! Enough with being egocentric, enough with thinking I create my own reality, enough with believing that I'm in charge of my own destiny, enough with the linear stuff of personality. This holy instant would I give to you. Be you in charge, for I would but follow. People say, even people will go around and say, I am God. Wait a minute, let's listen to this again. For I would but follow. They say to Jesus, what about this stuff in the Bible? I and the Father are one. Are you saying that you're God when you say I and the Father are one? He says, the statement has 2 parts. Jesus Christ is emphasizing that I and the Father are one has 2 parts. He wouldn't be saying this in the Course unless there was something to learn. For be you in charge, for I would but follow. The statement, I and the Father are one, has 2 parts. Well, we know that in the Trinity there's 3 parts. There's Father, Son, Holy Ghost. Well, what if this triune God, what if they're all the same spirit, but they have different temporary functions in time, and perhaps I and the Father are one is because the Creator created the creation. The Creator created the child of God. What if I said God and Christ are alike in every way except one? God created Christ, and Christ did not create God. This isn't a time thing. This is in eternity. What if there is a prime creator who created Christ? And what if the ego jumped on that and said, you're going to settle for number 2? You can be number 1. You can make yourself any way you want to be. Male, female, fat, skinny, tall, short, speak any language you want to. You can make yourself, and you can even do the Oprah Winfrey. You can reinvent yourself if you don't like how you make yourself. Just perpetually reinvent yourself. Sounds a little much like reincarnation here. Reincarnation. Reincarnate, you see? So, there's a workbook lesson in the Course in Miracles that says, I choose the second place to gain the first. I choose to be the Christ so that I can know the Creator. You see how deep that is? Now that's the metaphysics, and that's where the authority problem comes in. Everyone on the planet always says, I have authority issues with the police, with the government, with the parents, with my neighbor, authority issues. But authority issues is really the question, who is my author? And the true answer to who is my author is God. God is the author. God is my author, and God is the author of reality. So when we say, choose the second place to gain the first, or when I say, my Father loves his Son, he's basically just saying, he's reaffirming this internal connection. And then into the idea of abuse. abuse or mistreatment. I was giving a talk recently, Saturday, and out of my mouth was popping some stuff, and I was like, holy Christ! Because Jesus was going after abuse. I'm like, holy Christ, is the world ready to use? I guess I'm ready to use. But what it was I started to talk about infidelity, and which is a form of abuse, you could say. But the whole idea of fidelity and infidelity, and I got this passage from the Course that was coming to mind, that Jesus says, when God created you, it wasn't a passive thing. It wasn't like God just extended the light and then the Christ just went, It wasn't a passive thing, like we received all the light and love of eternity as our identity. But he says, no, Jesus says, actually you responded by saying yes. Ooh, that's some fidelity there. Wow. God gives you everything. Eternity, infinity, love, joy, happiness, peace, everything. And you responded in the affirmative with a yes. Wow, that's a commitment. We talked about commitment. That's a commitment. That's an eternal commitment, right? Saying yes to your creation as perfect love. So, the ego belief then must be the infidel. Right? If I answered yes to God, and Jesus says, I assure you, yes. It wasn't a passive thing, it was an affirmative, yes, I accept. Just like if you have a marriage proposal, which you would like, and you're saying, I need an affirmative answer for it to happen. Imagine God creates Christ and Christ answers yes in the affirmative. So what I did was, what came through me that one day, whatever it was, one Saturday, was the infidel is the ego. And to believe in the ego is to believe in infidelity. Of course, the breakout rooms after that brought up all these emotions. You can imagine the humans. What? You mean this brother or sister wasn't the one that broke the fidelity? It was the belief in the ego is the infidel, is the infidelity. And Jesus is teaching us that never happened. The atonement is the correction, which is the awareness that the separation never happened. So that's going back to your question, like how could this be? And how could I not want to know God? And Jesus is saying the correction is the awareness that the separation never happened. So all these books and symbols and words and music and all the things we're doing is all, we're just revving up to come back, to leap past the infidel into the light. We're going soaring, we're going for it. But those are some deep metaphysics, because that really gives you the presence. Like you were saying, what if you're in the presence of someone who's been abused in a traumatic kind of way and they're dealing with that? So that's what Jesus says, true empathy. Stay with what's real and true and solve the whole thing. Stay with what's true.
And also in the world today, as Jesus had said many years ago, things are happening at an alarming rate to Helen, and we are seeing this now with disasters and this narratives that are going on, and so it seems we're being asked to do what you're saying on a scale that appears to be larger than previous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it. And the movie yesterday, it really, the Swami came in 1965. That was pretty. Cuban Missile Crisis, nuclear testing, racial riots. Yep. 65 was an interesting time to land from somebody who never knew snow. to land in New York City on a freighter from Calcutta to New York City and to show up. He showed up. What his guru had asked him to do. He showed up. He showed up big time. Swami. He showed up big time. Yeah, he showed up with a big yes. Even though he was tempted to feel depressed and tempted to hop back onto the freighter, he didn't. He came with a big yes. So in that sense, it's like remembering the original yes. We'll use his terms. Krishna said yes. and his mission was to affirm that big yes. Like say, I say yes to love. And it was universal, he was very loving. He said, oh, chant the name of God, whatever name you want to put in there. That's universal, that's not exclusive, that's love. That's love that knows itself, is love. So. Very touching. Oh.
2:00.
Ari had something.
Well, are we at? Should we close the container?
I think we've reached our point.
Okay.
Yeah, we try to just give it over and stay with the parameters because there's always something to come somewhere and everything. But, please do contact us with those things. And this is a good time to say thank you to Ruth and Chris. It was actually the invitation. That's what makes everything come about.
Can we do something? Can we sing Happy Birthday to
you? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Chris. Happy birthday to you.
And how about a group photo?
Oh, yeah.
Then it gets posted to Facebook and we all go,
Go like this. Do you want to move over there?
we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody stays. Let's move.
I'll just